Down south, when someone does something really silly, everyone says, "Call Jesse Holmes." Jesse Holmes is the fool killer. But you know, he's just a made-up character like Santa Claus and Jack Frost. People use these characters to explain things when nature doesn't show them clearly. Even the smartest folks in the South don't know where the name Fool Killer comes from. Still, many Holmes from the Roanoke to the Rio Grande know about Jesse Holmes. People talk about him with a smile or sometimes a tear when they need help. Jesse Holmes is a busy guy. When I was a kid, I imagined Jesse Holmes as a scary old man in gray clothes with a long, messy gray beard and fierce red eyes. I thought he would come walking up the road, kicking up dust, with a stick in his hand and shoes tied with leather strings. Maybe I'll see him one day, but for now, let's focus on the story. I've noticed that most good stories have some kind of drink in them. People in stories drink everything. So, joining this good tradition, I'll include a drink, a single absinthe drip. It's a green drink, poured through a shiny silver dripper, cool and tricky. Now, let's talk about Kerner. He wasn't very smart. Besides that, he was an artist and my good buddy. You see, authors don't like it when artists draw pictures for their stories and mess them up. Try it yourself. Write a story, sell it, spend the money, and then, 6 months later, borrow a quarter or a dime and buy the magazine. What do you find? A big drawing of your hero, Black Bill the cowboy. But here's the catch. You wrote about a horse in your story, and the artist drew Black Bill in fancy trousers, holding a fancy rifle. In the background, there's a street and the Taj Mahal, a famous building in India. That's not right. Enough. I didn't like Kerner at first, but one day we met and became friends. He was young and wonderfully sad, not because he was unhappy, but because he was full of energy and had so much ahead of him. He was almost too sad in a lively way. When a person starts being funny in a sad way, it usually means they're changing their hair color. Kerner had a lot of hair, carefully styled like an artist's. He liked smoking, enjoyed dinners with red wine, and most of all, he was a bit foolish. Surprisingly, I envied him. Once, he said he liked one of my stories he found in a collection. He described it to me, and I wished Mr. Fitzjames O'Brien were alive to hear the praise for his work. But mostly, Kerner made consistent foolish choices. Let me explain what I mean. There was a girl. Now, for me, girls are things you find in schools or photo albums. But I pretended to understand because I wanted to keep Kerner as a friend. He showed me her picture in a locket. She was either a blonde or a brunette, I forgot. She worked in a factory and earned $8 a week. Before factories use this low wage as an excuse, let me say she worked for 5 years to reach that amount, starting at $1.50 per week. Kerner's father had a couple of $1 million. He supported Kerner's love for art but disagreed when it came to the factory girl. So, Kerner gave up his inheritance, moved to a cheap studio, and survived on sausages for breakfast and Ferroni, the restaurant, for dinner. Ferroni appreciated art and provided credit for painters and poets, which was handy. Sometimes Kerner sold a painting, bought new tapestry, a ring, and a dozen silk ties, and paid Ferroni a couple of dollars on his bill. One evening, Kerner invited me to dinner with him and the factory girl. They planned to get married once Kerner could make money from his paintings. As for the ex-father's millions, poof. She was amazing. Small and kind of pretty, and she felt just as comfortable in that cheap. She was natural. 2 things caught my attention about her. Her belt buckle was right in the middle of her back, and she didn't mention that a big man with a ruby stick pin had followed her all the way from 14th Street. Was Kerner really that foolish? I wondered. Then I thought about the many fancy things that $2 million could buy for those in need, like striped cuffs and blue glass beads. I told myself he was a fool. Then Elise, yes, that was her name, cheerfully told us that the brown spot on her shirt was from her landlady knocking at the door while she was heating an iron over the gas flame. She hid the iron under the bed covers until it was safe, and the chewing gum got stuck to it when she started ironing the shirt. I wondered how the chewing gum ended up there. Don't they ever stop chewing it? After a while, don't worry, we're getting to the absinthe drip now. Kerner and I were having dinner at Ferroni's. A mandolin and a guitar were playing. The room was filled with smoke in nice, wavy layers, just like the steam in Christmas posters. A lady in blue silk and gasoline gauntlets began humming a tune from the Catskills. Kerner, I said, you are a fool. Of course, said Kerner, I won't let her keep working. Not my wife. Why wait? She's willing. I sold that watercolor of the Palisades yesterday. We could cook on a 2-burner gas stove. You know the delicious meals I can make? Yes, I think we'll get married next week. Kerner, I said, you are a fool. Want an absinthe drip? Kerner said grandly. Tonight, your art's honored guest in terms of payment. I think we'll get an apartment with a bath. I've never tried one, I mean an absinthe drip, I said. The waiter brought it and poured the water slowly over the ice in the dripper. It looks exactly like the Mississippi River, I said, fascinated, looking at the messy drip. There are such places for $8 a week, said Kerner. You are a fool, I said, sipping the filtered drink. What you need, I continued, is the official attention of one Jesse Holmes. Kerner, not being from the South, didn't understand, so he sat, sentimental, thinking about his apartment in his messy, artistic way, while I looked into the green eyes of the fancy spirit of Wormwood. Then I casually noticed that a line of dancers painted on the wall near the ceiling had started moving, going across the room from right to left in a lively and impressive way. I didn't tell Kerner about it. Artists can be too sensitive to see things that don't follow the natural laws of wall painting. I sipped my absinthe drip and daydreamed. One absinthe drip isn't much, but I told Kerner again, kindly. You are a fool. And then, in simple words, Jesse Holmes is coming for you. Then I looked around and saw the fool killer, just like I always imagined, sitting at a nearby table and looking at us with his reddish, serious eyes. He was Jesse Holmes from head to toe. He had the long, messy gray beard, old-style gray clothes, a serious look, and dusty shoes like someone who had been called from far away. His eyes were fixed on Kerner. I was scared, thinking I had called him away from his important work in the South. I thought about running away, but I stayed in my seat, knowing that some people had escaped him even when it seemed like only becoming an ambassador to Spain could save them. I had called my friend Kerner a fool and was in danger, but I would try to save him from Jesse Holmes. The fool killer stood up from his table and walked over to ours. He put his hands on it and looked at Kerner with his fierce, angry eyes, ignoring me. You are a fool beyond hope, he said to the artist. Aren't you tired of being hungry? I'm giving you one last chance. Give up this girl and go back home. Say no, and you'll have to face the consequences. The fool killer's scary face was very close to Kerner's, but to my surprise, Kerner didn't show any sign of noticing him. "We're getting married next week," he mumbled, not paying much attention. "With my studio furniture and some used stuff, we can make it work." "You've sealed your fate," said the Fool Killer, speaking quietly but with a lot of force. "Consider yourself as good as dead. You had your last chance." In the moonlight, Kerner continued softly, "We'll sit under the skylight with our guitar and sing away the fake joys of pride and money." "On your own head be it," hissed the Fool Killer. My skin tingled when I realized that Kerner's eyes and ears weren't acknowledging Jesse Holmes at all. Then I understood that somehow I was the only one who could see through the veil, and I had to save my friend from the Fool Killer. My face must have shown some fear and amazement. "Excuse me," said Kerner, with a weak, friendly smile. Was I talking to myself? It's becoming a habit for me, I think. The Fool Killer turned and left Ferroni's. "Wait here for me," I said, standing up. "I need to talk to that man." "Did you have no response for him?" "Just because you're a fool, does it mean you have to die like a mouse under his foot? Couldn't you at least say something to defend yourself?" "You're drunk," O'Kerner heartlessly said. "No one talked to me." "The one who messes with your mind," I said, "was just above you, choosing you as his victim. You're not blind or deaf." "I didn't see anyone like that," O'Kerner said. "I only saw you at this table. Sit down. From now on, no more absinthe drips for you." "Wait here," I said, angry. "If you won't look out for your own life, I'll do it for you." I hurried out and caught up with the gray man halfway down the street. He looked just like I had imagined him, threatening, gray, and awful. He walked with a white oak staff, and if it weren't for the street sprinkler, dust would be flying under his steps. I grabbed his sleeve and led him to a dark corner of a building. I knew he was a made-up character, and I didn't want a cop to see me talking to nothing, or I might end up in mental hospital. "Jesse Holmes," I said, facing him bravely, "I know about you. I've heard stories about you my whole life. I now understand what a problem you've been for your country. Instead of getting rid of foolish people, you've been killing the young and talented ones that a nation needs to thrive and become great. You're a fool yourself, Holmes. You started wiping out the smartest and best people in our country 3 generations ago when old-fashioned ideas of society and honor were narrow and close-minded. You proved it when you targeted my friend Kerner, the smartest guy I've ever known." The Fool Killer looked at me seriously and closely. "You're acting strange," he said, curiously. "Oh yes, now I recognize you. You were sitting with him at the table. Well, if I'm not mistaken, I heard you call him a fool, too." "I did," I said. "I enjoy doing that. It's out of jealousy. By all the standards you know, he's the most outstanding and flamboyant fool in the world. That's why you want to kill him." "Can you tell me who or what you think I am?" the old man asked. I laughed loudly and then stopped suddenly, remembering that it wouldn't be good to be seen laughing alone with just a brick wall. "You are Jesse Holmes, the Fool Killer," I said seriously, "and you're planning to harm my friend Kerner. I don't know who called you, but if you do harm him, I'll make sure you get caught for it. That is," I added sadly, "if I can get a cop to notice you. They're not very good at spotting mythical beings, and I think it would take the entire police force to catch a myth murderer." "Well," said the Fool Killer briskly, "I must be going. You better head home and sleep it off. Good night." Suddenly, I felt a fear for Kerner, and my tone softened. I leaned against the gray man's sleeve and pleaded with him. "Mr. Fool Killer, please don't hurt little Kerner. Why don't you go back south and target troublemakers and leave us alone? Why not go to Fifth Avenue and harm millionaires who hoard their money and prevent young fools from marrying just because one of them lives on the wrong street? Come have a drink, Jesse. Will you ever figure out your job? Do you know the girl your friend is infatuated with? He asked the Fool Killer. I do, I said, and that's why I called Kerner a fool. He's a fool for waiting so long to marry her. He's a fool for waiting, hoping to get approval from some absurd $2 million parent or something. Maybe, said the Fool Killer, I might have seen it differently. Could you go back to the restaurant and bring your friend Kerner here? Oh, what's the point, Jesse? I sighed. He can't see you. He didn't know you were talking to him at the table. You're just a made-up character, you know. Maybe he can see me this time. Will you go get him? Okay, I said, but I have a feeling you're not entirely sober, Jesse. You seem to be wavering and losing your shape. Don't disappear before I get back. I returned to Kerner and said, There's a man with an invisible dangerous urge waiting to see you outside. I think he wants to harm you. Come with me. You won't see him, so don't be scared. Kerner looked worried. Why, he said, I didn't know one absinthe could do that. Stick to the normal drink. I'll walk home with you. I led him to Jesse Holmes. Rudolph, said the Fool Killer, I give up. Bring her to the house. Give me your hand, boy. Good for you, Dad, said Kerner, shaking hands with the old man. You'll never regret it once you get to know her. What? The Fool Killer was Kerner's father. But I thought I was talking to the invisible Fool Killer. So, you did see him when he was talking to you at the table? I asked Kerner. We hadn't spoken to each other in a year, said Kerner. It's all right now. I walked away. Where are you going? Called Kerner. I am going to look for Jesse Holmes, I answered with dignity and reserve.